Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to I was going to say let's play Starbase. No, we're not. Let's play Starbase Frequently Asked Questions. So, we are continuing on our Frequently Asked Questions series. We've been just going through them, reading them, talking about some of them, and even giving some of my points and even adding to the Frequently Asked Questions because the devs have given us a lot of information on the Discord, Reddit, and Steam, etc. So, we are continuing on. So last time we got to the on a massively multiplayer part, we talked about how that it's going to be a mix of P2P and dedicated server. And I gave a little picture here. This was what I showed, how it would be a master server, and then the players themselves, when they get near each other, will create their own little localized server and still work in conjunction with the master server and help, provide some performance, things like, for example, physics. I say physics rendering, which is probably the worst word ever. I mean, rendering is always on the client side, but I should say physics calculations being run on that. So that's a bit of a messy wording there, but anyways, so we are talking an MMO like a 64 player server or a true MMO like WoW. So more the direction of WoW, of course. What's the largest number of people you can comfortably fit in one area? So can't say the number, sadly. I think it's quite high, but we need to do more tests before I can say anything other than others might know a bit more. We have done 75 plus people already. We need more players to test our boundaries. Generally, I think the game caps visible players to 100. The server won't complain, though. We have some pretty clever server architect and networking going on, so that should be handled. But there may be issues to iron out. We'll have that will have trouble producing until there's players doing that. So basically, they're going to do a stress test, and they haven't never tried 100 players in an area, and then they're going to be like, you see the closest 100 players, and sort of that's how they're handling it. So the closest 100 players would show up. And this will be more important more in the PvE areas than the PvP areas, because getting 100 people at once will probably be a little more challenging out there. But so they haven't tested this out. They don't know if the tech works fully, in that sense. So eventually there will be a stress test in a sense to test that out. So it definitely needs to be addressed. But one way would be to prioritize the ships always and skip some of the crews instead. So, for example, the constructs themselves would show up before the crew members inside of them would show up, for example. And XComp Wiz actually says, which I believe we do, so he's already programmed it that way. Is this a seamless MMO? All the players in one server, or their server lines? I'm not sure what that means, but it is a seamless MMO. So everyone's in the same universe, basically. So you fly to point A to point B, and if your friend's gonna be at point B, you'll definitely see them. Will people be connecting from different countries experience rubber banding or lag? Each player has experienced him or herself without lag. Other players are seen based on their connection between the players. So from our understanding, if you try to lag your connection, this sounds like no one's the host in this case. Rather, everyone's the host and the joiner in a sense to prevent this from happening. But basically, it sounds like if you try to lag your connection, you're only going to hurt yourself, not the other player. So it'll be interesting to see how that happens. Is there instancing in the MMO part? Not normally. So some spaces may be instanced to give players a controlled environment. For example, near the mega stations might be 100 somewhat areas. Well, this is actually different anyways than what they're saying here. But I guess they're sort of like that view distance instancing in a sense, but not in the traditional sense of instancing. Like, you play EverQuest 2 and you go into a very popular zone and there's like 10 instances of it running. It's not going to be like that. Somebody says here it's not instance in a traditional sense in combat, but rather just showing the nearest 100 players at the moment. It can be arranged in any way, and there are some need improvements to the limit, so that's kind of cool. How far could I get in the game as a solo player? Having a meaningful trading is in part of the social gameplay aspects we are striving for. I think self-sustenance is possible, but requiring much more work, as some necessary things are more difficult to acquire, such as some advanced tech needed by ships. Do you have your own servers or rented ones? Distributed server systems. I don't know exactly the plan on hosting them, but probably not on our office network. It's distributed model, and we have built the different droplets in house. The player interaction, physics, etc. is handled with rather sophisticated. I can't even say the word right. Peer-to-peer. Persistence and some security elements handled on our server. So it's basically talking about you calculating some of that that stuff on your client side rather than the server having to do all that work for you. Can we self-host Starbase server? No, it's an MMO. There will be a sandbox mode, of course, which doesn't have progression, but you'll be able to do something in there. The sandbox. So what is the sandbox mode? Sandbox is offline universe with no progression at the moment. There are plans to add tutorial scenarios to the sandbox, but probably not at EA launch. So no progression on a private server? Basically, yes. Will the server have periodic downtime for maintenance? Our server updates are pretty fast and can be updated individually. Don't really know yet how to translate to players, or how that translates to players, but I'm hoping it'll be as smooth as possible. However, during EA, we'll be updating the game often, and every time the updates server do also. So I talked to Laurie about this, and I forget the example, but it sounded like there would be multiple updates in a month, and then one large update per month. So it does sound like there'd probably a lot of hot fixes and small updates and balance fixes and stuff like that within the month. And then there would be one large update per month. It sounds like their goal. So that kind of sounds cool. And their deployment things are like this. Somebody tried to have an argument with me that, it takes them a long time to build and compile and blah, blah, blah. And honestly, I said, outside of the quality assurance, I can't see it being that much. If they're doing their own engine and they're doing it right, it should be somewhat decent. These MMOs that were written 20 years ago taking like several hours to do an update, that's a bit of a joke on today's kind of technology. And the devs actually agreed that no, it's pretty much like click a button and it kind of deploys in a sense. A little more complicated than that, but most of that complication is more about the QA testing than anything. So on the Interstellar Engineering, how intuitive will building be? We have a pretty good base for tools, and the editor improves on a constant basis. So we aim for a pretty smooth experience. How do I get materials? How do I mine and refine them? Or can I buy them? You can buy materials directly, but it's cheaper to produce them from scratch if you have the capability. So you go out and you mine them. You can use your pickaxe. You can have a laser on your ship. You can blow the side of it and then pickaxe or laser them up. You can, and then you can go to your backpack or your ship's storage, and you can store, or you can carry an entire asteroid as well. And you also have like some sort of multi-block system that can be used more than just a furnace that we've learned recently. It has basically swapped the parts to have different functions of it. So you can cook your materials, for example, in it, or do other things. Can we make alloys by blending other materials? So alloys will be a thing. We'll see when window glass is an alloy for starters. We'll see when, but window and glass is an alloy for starters. There is some design behind this. So we already talked, and basically the idea is it's going to be like simple as possible in a sense. So it's a fixed recipe. You don't get to adjust the ratios for yourself. The ratios will be a fixed recipe. So for example, you might take, and this is not using any of the elements in the game. This is just making like a comparison to our real life. For example, you could take bronze. So if you take, 3 copper, 1 tin, maybe you'll get 4 bronze out of it. That's sort of what they're aiming at, as in the fixed setup. Some people thought maybe you can mix and mash and change some of the properties, but you cannot. Will there be pre-made ships to use, or do all the ships have to be built? You can buy pre-made ships. There are plenty of pre-made ships and also broken ships to be repaired. This one I'm confused about. Does this mean just going into space and finding ships to break? Because we know that you can't find random ships in space besides player ones, to be repaired. So I'm a little confused on that. Can I find and salvage and repurpose existing ships? You can buy any ship and kit bash weapons on its hardpoints, or go a little further and use larger shipping vessel, cargo room, and make a hidden weapon port or torpedo tubes masquerade as a harmless civilian ship. So basically, you can do anything and everything to the ships themselves. Simple as that. What kind of parts are necessary for building a ship? There are tons of assets where to build from. Every ship needs a frame built from beams, thrusters bolted to the frame, and buttons and levers to operate. And of course, electricity and propellant. Everything else is optional, like plating, windows, doors, other devices, etc. So I'll read the rest of this first. The base building blocks are everything from a single bolt to armor plating, devices and such, but will probably provide a pre-built modules to ease of overall experience. You may be able to save your own modules for later usage, which they kind of gave an example of the station building or the plot where you can buy or rent. They showed this sort of an example of that. There is several different fixed length beams, also intersections, etc. Same with plating, a lot of different fixed sizes, or you can use modules that are pre-built. So there you go, combination of several items, and then you can create and save your own modules. So you can design and create a module and kind of fit them together and however you want. You basically will build your own library of modules eventually. At least that's what we aim for. I created 2 pictures to show your ship with only the frame built and a fully completed one. So this is only the frame, what it looks like, which is functional. Actually, I don't know if I can see the thrusters there. It's kind of hard to tell, but if those are the thrusters there, no gun there, but is there back thrusters? It's hard to tell, but this is the idea. You can have a frame with the basics inside of it and it would run, or one with the armor plating as well, which you kind of want to protect it. Now, it has structural integrity, keep in mind. So if you have a crappy frame, your ship will just probably collapse while flying. Each part needs to be bolted together to make the spaceship. Can I scale or resize ship parts? No custom scaling. We'll provide all parts you can use. Is there vertex grid snapping? You'll be able to snap parts together. No specific grid at the moment, but it's similar to grid building, and we might support grids as well. We'll see how the ship editor comes around. Can parts be built on an angle from one another? There are angles, but they are sections of angles. In the trailer, you can see that the fighter with similar angles in the scene where the large kingdom fleet approaches the station they're attacking. You need to allow certain rules similar to real world. You can't place I-beams in weird angles. They need to be in 90-degree intervals to each other. So attachment plates can be set correctly and bolted together. When you follow these kind of rules, everything else is freeform. If you're talking about the ship's inner and outer paneling, I believe most of it, if not all, current angles or panels are 45 degrees and often flat on either side of the angled part. This is to match the underlying beams and the structures of the ship. I think there are currently a couple of slightly curved decorative panels as well that can be used used on the top of structural plates to decorate. We have experimented with other angles as well, but they are for show for now. So there you go. Can I build spherical or circular parts? Well, I know you can somewhat, because we saw a glass light thing in one of the trailers where we thought maybe it was some sort of core, some important storage, but in the end it was just glass, apparently, just for a decorative beam in the middle of the ship. Systems allow perfectly round parts, but we haven't introduced such parts as their reuse possibilities are low. Basically, they wouldn't fit only one certain shape ship, and fully unique parts would quickly take a toll on the technical side, on the experience, meaning parts which are useless for other decorative decorate the experience also. So that's kind of complicated sounding, but anyways, that's probably me reading it. Do I need to worry about bolts and structural integrity when building? There is a structural integrity in game, so you need to build things robust enough. So there you go. As for the specific question regarding to bolting, I need to investigate. The durability system is very complex. There's limits to bolts durability, so inefficiently bolting can break. But also, I do know for a fact that I've talked to them, over bolting can be also you can also weaken the structure, basically. Well, material properties affect parts of like a ship's frame, for sure. We do have various materials, but for now, there are only a few that have high structural durability. Most of the materials won't work as a ship frame. On the material front, we have cheap stuff that can be shot even with handheld weapons up to military grade plating that can stop ship weaponry, basically. What happens if a ship takes damage? Generators and other objects have some kind of threshold for how many % of mass they must lose before breaking. If a bullet manages to pierce the generator, it's most likely going to explode. If cables are destroyed, the ship might lose functionality regarding power management, for example. Currently, the cables are super durable, though. So unless if the cable breaks, your ship is pretty bad shape already, or someone is targeting that cable with close range tools. So basically, they have to go right to your ship, inside your ship, go to that cable, shoot it, and that would cause that. Currently, the cables are super durable, though. Oh yeah, we just read that. So it would be possible to disable a poorly designed ship in one shot by getting a lucky shot to their generator's socket board, where the power comes out. How do I repair damaged ships? There are repair tools that are shown in the trailer that can be used to paint the missing voxels back onto objects that have been damaged. Although there has been talk about putting in a threshold of damage beyond which it can be remake it. As long as you have the materials, anything entirely gone, you would have to find replacements for, and then place them back. The insurance system should help if your ship takes catastrophic damage, though fixing it yourself would be most likely cheaper than the repair tool can't just wholesale bring the entire ship back. So you can't just like miss half your ship and use the repair tool and just boop, there you go, my other half is back. If I cut something in half and repair both pieces, do I have two parts? Yes, you could duplicate stuff with a repair gun. It would take slightly more resources than using an industrial 3D printer, so it's not the most efficient way of duplicating, just most convenient. Yes, there's been talks about having 50% of the pieces left in order to build tool to be able to fix in order to avoid duplicating. So this is kind of weird though, because it kind of made it sound like if a piece is missing you can't bring it back, but here it's like you cut half your ship, you can bring it back, but a 3D printer is more efficient. So a little confused on that a bit, but I guess that one we require playing with it and seeing how it goes, right? How much of the ship can be replaced before it's a whole different ship? We've been thinking that the flight control unit of the ship is the ship's identity, so you could replace all but one part. Okay. What is the flight control the FCU? Essentially your ship's driving wheel system thingy. FUCs take control input and translate it into thruster values, balancing out placement issues, and so on. You don't have to have all your thrusters assemblies exactly positioned so the center thrust is aligned with the center mass. FCU adds turning input and making you go forward when you want to go forward, for example. Will there be faction-specific ships? Yes, there are warships for the Kingdom and Empire, but it's not like others can't fly them. They aren't just socially allowed, i.e. stealing a warship is a bad... Okay, so they can't fly them. They just aren't socially allowed. Stealing a warship is a bad idea. If the current faction ships, while perform and handle well, definitely are not the fastest, best designs, as they have also some plating used for looks. Do ships and stations have exclusive parts? Stations and ships have almost all exclusive parts. So basically, all ships and stations have about all the same parts, or does that mean they all have separately exclusive parts? That's kind of weird. Will ship come with manuals on how to fix them? The ship is the manual. Rip out all the plating and check out the cabling under them. Better get hands-on experience on where everything goes for when it's all in pieces and you're trying to figure out which bits need to be connect where. Are all ships voxels? All ships are made from parts that can fracture and or be damaged at the voxel level. We voxelize the models only after voxel damage. Is there any sort of... I lost my top there. Is there any sort of max size for ships and stations in the game? Not sure we can say, as not sure what the exact limits. Design might be set based on performance or expectations. With the current tech, stations could pretty much be as large as you can make them. There might be some limitations, but a 5 by 5 by 5 kilometer size station should have no problems. Ships, on the other hand, have more limitations, both actual design, but once they hit the technical limitations on our engine side, we'll put our talented codes to the task of increasing the limit. Currently, our biggest frigate we've seen in the trailer is slightly over what our tech likes to have. So I don't know if they said it here, but that ship was like, I believe, 125,000 parts, I believe. And did it span several decks? I'm not quite sure, but it was quite a large ship. What's the max? Is there a max block and triangle limit on building? Not specifically. Can we build capital ships? That is our goal, to introduce such capital ships at some point. Definitely not at EA launch. We need to do some technical magic first. We have some actual ideas. So right now it sounds like there's no limits. So technically, could you make a ship considered capital? What is a capital ship size considered? I mean, are they thinking that it should be a kilometer in length? Because the one shown in the trailer, I think, was like maybe about a little over 150 meters long, 125,000 parts. Are they thinking a capital ship should be 1 million parts and 500 meters in size? I really don't know what they consider a capital ship, so that's kind of a hard definition there to figure out. Is there a maximum speed? There's an upper limit. I think, not sure if it's hard cap or dampening mechanics. Ships have different speeds based on mass, though, which we talked about. Currently, we're experimenting with 150 as the max speed. If I remember correctly, some kind of limits is necessary to detect collision, which this is the case in most physics engine-based games. Hard cap for performance purposes like collision detecting, etc. There will be a max speed, but also if a big object is harder to go that fast. Is their ship control console customized? So they have custom. Yes, they have custom made, as in you can place your own levers wherever and make them interact with whichever chip programming field you want. As long as it's securely bolted and you can run cable to it. You can bind the controls to whatever key you want as well, so that's good to know. How are ships powered? So the ships themselves are generators. They're limited output. You can use multiple at the moment to cover huge expensive things. They will also use fuel and require eventual maintenance, switching fuel rods, repairing possible damage. We have solar panels, but I don't think they are yet implemented fully as of the moment. There are also batteries and spare fuel cells as well. So the generators, the ship's powered through the generators, and it's a multi-structural thing, which is pretty cool. And they're required for the thrusters, but they probably use a very little bit amount for that. But where the thrusters come in play, they use propellant, and propellant's a fuel which you would need. So it's also sort of like, I mean, when you think about it, a ship is powered by propellant as well, like to move it forward, right? So do parts need to be physically manually wired to each other? The wiring can be put to almost any surface, and it does not take that much space. I think currently it allows even between plating and superstructure, but that is very hard to repair if it gets cut out. Here's a boltable socket used to get electric and gas wiring through plating. So this is kind of cool. So this is a socket, and I guess you plug it through that and it goes through, I guess. Manually wiring in the announcement trailer in this video, so you can see the wiring there. Currently only a combination of electricity and data and separate piping for propellant, but we'll consider additional options as well. Do generators explode? Active generators are very volatile. Taking a well-placed hit to your generator will be catastrophic, like ripping the ship into pieces. Catastrophic. Can my ship self-destruct? Self-destructing is possible. Yesterday we played with a disabled gunship and attached an autocannon ammo case next to the reactor and hit it with a pickaxe, it blew up in a chain reaction. So that's really cool. How do thrusters work? Do they require fuel? Oh, there you go. Thrusters require propellant and power, are individually controllable. Propellant is currently refined from ice. There are multiple thruster variants with varying power, propellant, consumption ratios, and max thrust. Does thrusters' positions affect the speed and propulsion? Speed is measured in meters per second. Ship thruster count and mass don't really translate directly to top speed, as thruster position and shape of the ship can have serious impact on that. Central of mass affects the flight for sure. FCU plus MFC, my freak number, flight control unit, and main flight computer can balance the flight, but non-optimal thruster placement won't be as efficient as well-placed thrusters. So the good news is if you really screw your placement up, you're not screwed. Basically, the computer will help balance your ship and fly properly in a sense, but it won't be efficient. Do thrusters do damage? Thrusters emit super corrosive trail, so you can't block the side which provides thrust. How does my ship turn? We have main thrusters that are your main way to propel yourself forward, but for turning and such, you will add smaller maneuverable thrusters to the side of the ship. Here's a picture of them. I don't know if that's the back or something. Maybe the back of it? I'm not sure, because why is it square and that's not square? I'm not quite sure what this is. Maybe it's part of... No, I don't know. Can ships be pressurized? We have actually developed some checks to check for airtightness of the ship, but we haven't found a use for that. So I think currently it's legacy tech, so no plans, but possibly if we come up for the need of it, like once we get landing started, then it might need pressurization. So it's probably disabled by default anyways, just because there's probably performance calculations unneeded for that, but who knows. Are there liquid physics? Can things leak? Not much for liquid physics, but definitely resource leaks, and the resource system is closed system fluid simulation for resource flow. So basically, if you cut a propellant, it will leak into space. You'll lose propellant. There might even be a hazard for that, but it isn't simulated. Like, you can't actually see it there gather and just float around and, nothing like that, right? Do machines produce heat and require cooling? Yes, generators and weapons produce heat that has to be counteracted by coolant, that's really cool. Will there be a system for coupling and decoupling ship parts? Some coupling, like cargo systems, yes. What about coupling and decoupling explosive charges? Yes, explosives exist. Evil smile. Is it possible for a bigger ship to carry a smaller ship, i.e. carriers? Bigger ships can carry smaller ships, indeed. What are the limitations with ships docking with each other, if any? No limitations, but colliding with high speed will leave a wreckage. We have both tractor beams and cargo lock beams for docking solutions, so if you want to have a fighter bay, you would lock the fighter to the mothership with the cargo lock beams, and if you want to slowly pull something near you, use a tractor beam. How long is it intended to take for various of ship sizes to be constructed? We have not decided how long the actual construct time will take, but the time-consuming part is the design part. There will be an in-game editor for ship building at some point. Can I make and save ship blueprints for building? I remember that being discussed. Not sure the current time frame for printed ships from blueprints, but would be a later update, not at release. So this is interesting because we talked about manually doing stuff and making a factory, but it does sound like you might be able to print an entire big ship. Yes, we actually call them blueprints that can be created in game editor. You can order a blueprint with tons of credits to be built for you, or build it yourself, which building it yourself makes sense because you'll save a lot of money. But what's the difference? Is it 2 times, 10 times? Like, I hope the efficiency between them are quite a lot, because if not, then people will probably spend more time making credits and, rather than having to go through the pain of, hand building it in a sense. There's an in-game editor in the works for designing ship blueprints. Basically allows building without limits and doing test flights. Multiple users can play in the same editor session. There is also an asset browser for selecting parts that can be placed into the scene. Part placement is free as long as the parts don't overlap with each other. Snapping parts together makes it easier, but it can be disabled if desired. Usual editor functionality like copy and paste. Usual editor functionality like copy and paste, undoing and redoing works. Ships can be saved onto the local hard drive into blueprint files. Interesting. I like this, but I also want like a hard copy of this. And so can I sell them to other players in the game so I can make money being creative? Definitely, but can't promise this at EA launch, which I really hope so, and I really hope it doesn't end up on Workshop. Are there pistons, joints, rotors that can deform parts of a moving ship? Yes, most of them. They also can be damaged, so you can have damaged doors still opening. Could I automate mining drone setup, work like a drone carrier? Yes. I'm not 100% sure what type of sensors will be available at EA, but eventually yes. Because right now there's only one real sensor, unless you count the radio as a sensor, which is the rangefinder, and that's it. And it's like a fixed point, so you'd have to move it around like a friggin' gyroscope or something to get it to work really well. Are there remote cameras? There are no cameras right now, though there's been talk of them. So there we go. So we're going to continue next time, and we're getting through this. We're finally getting near the end here, so that's awesome. I hope you've enjoyed this. Please don't forget to subscribe, comment, like, and we'll see wonderful people next time. Have a wonderful day. Goodbye.